count Paul as a friend and a fellow soldier in this war against all the insanity that's going on. So we're blessed to have him here this morning. Paul, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul G. So better than 4G, 5G, or 6G, there's Paul G. So all I'm trying to do is give you a little benefit of what I've learned over the last 8 or 9 years, because essentially I've had to go down a learning curve. Yeah, I know a lot of people, including myself, who are called electromagnetically sensitive. So we can go into what that means, but it's a category you don't want to be pushed into if you can avoid it. And what we do is we come up with the best strategies we can to essentially see the propaganda machine, figure out what's real, and then try to get some kind of local control over this ridiculous rollout, which is essentially a wireless home invasion. So the best way for me to give you some background information is to probably just show you some of the material on some websites that I put up and maintain. And then that's available for anyone to go to, and they can search for anything they want. And I don't want to make this very long, so I'm happy to do, roughly an overview of what we've been able to do, and then answer any questions that you might have. Everybody's rollout is a little different because you all have different laws. You all have different things that help to enable this quote unquote rollout. We in the United States do maintain some local control over the siting of wireless telecommunications facilities. And that is different from state to state. So I'm an expert in my state, California, and I do the best I can to try to help people in other states. It's difficult for anyone to know all of the laws across the world. So I'm not going to be an expert in your country's laws, but there might be some similarities, so that may help you. So I think the best thing to do is just to share you can see a browser, and you can see a woman staring at what's one of the early 5G towers. And this was one of the first websites that we set up. But essentially, it just has a little gallery here of different photos. And this has now been streamlined to some degree, but this is what they were sticking on utility poles when they first got started. But it's important to see it, right? So this big gray box that she's standing next to was essentially all the power that was needed to power this essential full power cell phone tower. All this other equipment are the different ways that they get the power up the pole. And what you're not seeing is at the top of the pole, they generally put some kind of antenna up there in a cylinder. And the cylinder is just a covering. And then inside the cylinder are generally 3 panel antennas pointed in, each to have about roughly 120 degree spray. 3 times 120 is 360. So it goes around the circle and it goes out for several miles. So one of the more difficult things to do is to use just regular adjectives when you talk about power. People kind of get confused and bamboozled by the way they talk about power because, you have to think about what is radio frequency microwave radiation. And then, you have to have some way to visualize it and understand what are the key parameters that matter. All right. So what we're going to do is go over some of the basics there. We're just going to show you a few of the web pages that we have, but there's lots to learn from here. And so this is one website. The current website that we have is called Wire America. And this then leads to a number of other websites that are branded that way. We have Wire Arizona, Wire California, Wire Colorado. See, these are people that we help around the country to just help them. So what I have on page 1 is a very good introduction to what this whole thing is. And it just keeps going, scrolling down, and you see there's a series of videos that are well worth watching, including some of the top attorneys in the United States. This, again, would be very specific to us, may not help you so much. What is happening is that people are getting sick all over the country, all right? This guy, unfortunately, had a cell tower about 800 feet from his house. They turned it on, and he was already electromagnetically sensitive, and it forced him to go in for a $150,000 operation to kind of deaden the sensitivity of his heart. And so he's post-operation now, and he's just trying to still find a way to turn off the tower. These poor people had to move out of their home. It's a mother, 2 daughters, and a husband, and all these 3 got sick. And we're talking about basic symptoms of microwave radiation illness. Ringing in the ears, they had headaches, they couldn't sleep, They were vomiting in their beds, and so to the point where they couldn't do it. They had to move out. So they have a house that they paid a lot of money for that they can't live in. And they've been working for over 2 years to get this tower moved. All right. And so this was built very, very quickly and very, circumstances that are not very good. They cut a lot of corners. And, they're entering into a lawsuit now after 2.5 years of trying to solve the problems. Okay. They almost got it solved, but it was taken away from them. There are 9 important videos here, and they span over several years. And this is another woman who was injured by a cell phone tower that was put right in front of her house. I'll show you what a picture of that looks like. But it's literally 12 feet from her bedroom window. And so she got a bloody mass in her brain that they had to remove surgically, and she was forced out of her home. So this is kind of a wireless invasion of your home, and it can truly mess up your life. And if there's any way that you can ensure that you manage 3 important variables through this process, you will end up doing a better job. What are those 3 variables? Okay. They are vertical, horizontal, and power. Vertical, horizontal, and power, VHP. If you could just explain it this way, people have a better understanding of what they're up against. Vertical, obviously, is how tall off the ground is it? It makes a difference whether those antennas are 200 feet off the ground or 50 feet off the ground. And honestly, you want it higher, and you don't want it going directly into a bedroom window of some sort, which is what happens when they put them on utility poles. It's pointed right at a 2nd or 3rd story bedroom window. So horizontal is how many feet that antenna is away from you. And so, distance is your friend here. And so you want to be able to get something like 2,500 feet in between you and any antenna, because they don't really have good power output regulations. And if you get that thought about power, that is the amount of electricity that gets pushed into a pole, and then they convert it into microwave radiation and comes out of the top of the pole. All right, so now that it's going out of the top of the pole, just envision it the best you can, okay? Imagine you decided we had to take, and I don't know what your measurements are, how many meters or half mile. 2,500 feet is about a half a mile, and so that might be something like a kilometer away. And so that's kind of the area that they want to serve with one of these installations. So what they do is they spray power at the top, and it's kind of thick when it first comes out of the antenna, and then it spreads out and gets thinner and thinner and thinner, if you will, as it goes out to the edges. So those that are closest for when the signal first hits the ground or a window are in the most trouble. And then as it thuds into things such as a wall or a tree or even people, it's always absorbed and the signal's attenuated a bit. So then it continues on. And then if you get out there 500, 750 feet, that might be 300 meters or so, then it kind of calms down to a point where you get good service without it necessarily being a problem to you. But that all depends on vertical, horizontal, and power. And so for larger towers, you need more horizontal distance and definitely as much vertical distance as possible. And it's all about an angle as well. So I kind of say, look, if you think about this as the whole neighborhood, it's, maybe a kilometer radius around this tower. What is the goal of the wires company if they could achieve it? Oh, they want a nice thin layer of wireless everywhere. Think about blopping some jelly on a piece of bread, and you want to spread it around so it's nice and thin and even. Well, if they could do that, well, life would be good, but they can't. And so really what happens is they blop the jelly on the corner of the bread, and it kind of always stays blopped nice and thick in that corner. And then they get to spread from there. So people close to that corner of the bread where a bunch of jelly is they're screwed. And essentially their health is going to go south, and a lot of bad things are going to happen to them. So what do we try to do? We try to enforce our rights in order to try to get them to have responsible placement of towers. All right, so then these videos are well worth listening to because you will learn some of the basics of what's going on, how they mislead people when they talk about it. Why do you get all worked up about 5G when 4G is just as bad? And what is going on with millimeter wave versus other things? Well, you realize that there was a whole bunch of talk about millimeter wave, but in reality, at least in the United States, it wasn't successful. They're not really rolling that out. What they are going to roll out is what's called C-band for citizen radio band, and that's in the 3,500 megahertz range. So, you have to learn a little bit about radio and how they talk about it. And then you have to actually go and figure out a good way to get this across to people. One of the best ways to do that is to kind of focus on some of the menus up here. All right. And before I do that, let me just finish up what's on this page. These 9 videos were carefully selected. They're not very long. This is your best education right here, if you can work your way through these videos. This is a case in the United States that has links, 27 volumes. I will try to make this a little bit larger. 27 volumes of evidence showing harms from microwave radiation at levels far below whatever ICNIRP, which is an international standards body, or the FCC has set up as a guideline. I'll talk to you a little bit about how ridiculous this guideline is, but it is a scam, and it's been a scam from day one. All right. And at least in the United States, we have 3 important pages that to help us out. And that's because we understand what is the Telecommunications Act, which gives them the right to put up cell towers, and how is it at odds with the stated purpose of the act, which is to promote the safety of life and property. All right. So we have this agency called the FCC, and they put out a whole bunch of orders in addition to the legislation. And obviously these orders are to favor industry, and they don't care so much about people. But we actually do have the laws that help us out. All right, so these are real life examples, okay? And so what I call them are a WTF for wireless telecommunications facility. The industry wants to call them wireless communications facilities, but telecommunications, at least in the United States, has a specific definition, and it's one that favors us and our ability to control these things. So part of the problem is to not just take the phrases that you pick up in mainstream media about talking about the stuff. It's designed to get everybody to repeat the wrong phrases and the wrong words that will help industry achieve its goals. You want to talk about this accurately, and you want to talk about this using phrases that are more scientific and stated directly to what it is and what it isn't. And they never say microwave radiation, but that's exactly what it is. They try to call them things like waves or radio waves. No, turn it all back into microwave radiation. All right. Because essentially, they also talk about the inverse square law. Let's talk about that for a second. Okay. Here's the source right here of where the antenna is. This is something that was turned on in Sacramento, California. It's roughly 60 feet to that 2nd-story bedroom window. That's where 2 little girls were, 3 years old and 6 years old. They immediately got sick. So they went to their doctors. They got diagnoses. These people were, again, working 2 years to try to get this moved, but they actually had some success eventually, and it would happen very quietly. And why is that? They threw their evidence into a lawsuit. The very day the ruling came down, this tower wasn't removed. It was just quietly powered off. And how would they know? You would have to measure it with a meter to know. But no one announced anything. No one said anything. It just happened. And that's been off now for almost 2 years. I don't believe they have any intention of turning it back on, because these people dug in and they got the right evidence to prove the damages that were going on in their house, and they took the right steps. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. And so this is our main message to the people of the United States. You can do it. Well, how did this work? A bunch of people marshaled information and got it together and gave it to the right spots. This is that tower that injured the woman. This is how close it was to her bedroom right here. All right. And they powered that thing on in November, and she went in for surgery March 2nd, and then immediately had to move out of the house. This is what the neighbors painted on that first picture I showed you. They don't like this white box of big power on the sidewalk. In fact, do you need this much power? Well, of course you don't. And so when you think about the inverse square law, it's strongest right here close to the antenna. And as it goes through in distance, it falls off by what they call the square of the distance. Well, that's just following geometry, right? You look at the surface area of a sphere. It's generally spherical. It's not really trying to go up or down so much, it's trying to go out. So just think about, I don't know, maybe one of these big balls that you sit on for an exercise ball. And if it's round when no one's on it, and then you sit on it, it flattens out a little bit. That's kind of the shape of what's coming out of a cell tower. You know, they try to flatten it out a little bit to kind of get a little more horizontal of what's going on. But nothing's perfect and nothing's clean, and nothing really follows a line like this. Okay. It's just this big toroid shape that kind of rolls out. And you look at the math involved, and basically it's by the square of the distance. As you go out 10 times, then 10 squared is 100. The power drops. And so the whole
100-fold.
point is the further away you are, the better it is. It goes in exactly opposite the reverse. The closer you get, the power goes up by the square of the distance. And that's how you should talk about it. Because you really want to sit down and say, what do we want to do? We want to actually tie ourselves to what is and talk about it in terms of, and let's go to action here, and go to something called the report card. And this is a really nice thing that probably every school has. You have report cards that are handed out to kids, and everybody understands what an A is, what a B is, what a C, at least in the United States. And it generally corresponds to numbers. If you take tests and whatnot, you get between 90 and 100, you're in the A territory. If you go 80 to 90, you're in the B territory. And then you keep on going down from there, C's, D's, and F's, all right? Well, think about your neighborhood having a report card with respect to cell towers. And, we like A and B students in the United States. You should like A and B wires telecommunication facilities. And you should go around and say, no, we don't want anything but like a C. See, we take students that are C's and we coach them up, get them to the A and B level. Well, the good news is that we have a good happenstance of how you measure radio and how it maps to a standard report card. Let's take a look. What we have is excellent, good, fair, poor, and failing, corresponding to what they call decibel milliwatt. Decibel milliwatt is a very important term. It's easy to understand once you get there and just say, cool, we always want to talk about radio in terms of dBm. That's how we want to do it. You don't want to talk about it in terms of ICNIRP. That's designed to confuse you. You want to go back to dBm at all stages. It's easier to measure, it's easier to talk about, it's easier to reason about with everyone involved. And what you can see is that when you get somewhere in the 80s, then you have good service and it's not excessive. Once you get larger power, see, understand the one problem with dBm is they do it in negative numbers. So obviously, negative 90 is less power than negative 70, than negative 60. So this is a logarithmic scale, all right? So every time you go up by a 10 in a dBm scale, it goes up by a factor of 10. So the difference between minus 90 and minus 60 is 3 zeros, or 1,000 times, all right? You have 1,000 times more power at minus 60 than you do at minus 90. And that's why we call it excessive. And that's why we call it unacceptable. And that shouldn't be anywhere where people are. If you could constrain the thing to be in this range, this would describe you being about 2,500 feet from a cell phone tower, and you will get good service. They will tell you right here, this is straight from the industry. Oh, for 4G, minus 9 dBm is excellent service. Well, that's all right. We'll allow minus 90s, and we'll even give you up to minus 80, but nothing higher than that. If you could do this, this is how you can solve this problem, all right? And it's just happenstance that it maps to report cards. And that's why we always talk about report cards. Everyone has dealt with a report card. They know about it. It's a way to simplify what's going on so they have some idea of how to think about this. But the industry is just counting on being able to bamboozle everyone and just, say, oh, well, don't worry about it. This is complicated. We have an expert over here. Let him talk to you. And then we'll just try to get you talked into everything. But that's the problem, is that once you read the manual, once you figure it out, you can go ahead and get these ideas across to try to get some control over what's going on in your neighborhood. Okay. What does that really mean with respect to equipment? You want to actually bring back much, 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 much smaller equipment at much, 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 much lower power. And then you want to understand that there's a difference between what is something that will give you a cell phone call ability versus what will give you the ability to do wireless internet. Wireless internet is just not a good move. You don't want to do it. You want to do it by wire at all costs. All right. You don't want to hang in your house with a wireless router if you don't have to. That's just like having a cell phone tower in your house. You have to understand that microwave radiation, whether it comes from a wireless router or a cell phone tower, is pretty much the same. There's really no big difference here between the labels 4G, 5G, 3G. It's all very damaging. It's all confusing when you talk about the G's. Just don't talk about the G's. Talk about what it is. Microwave radiation at power levels that are excessive to human biology. And how do we know what the correct power levels are? Well, it's pretty easy to figure out once you go to the evidence that was put together in the United States in the wonderful court decision from December 2020, from August of 2021. All right. And that evidence is right here. There's 27 volumes, 11,000 pages. This is all available for you to download and use and stick into whatever record you need. And this is the evidence and a picture of it right here. And this is what the judges ruled on. And this is why it was sent back to the FCC. This whole attempt at trying to actually just take this ICNIRP standard and this FCC standard and extend it to all frequencies, they lost. It was actually handed back to them. And they're telling our agency, you're going to have to finally address the biological impacts of RF radiation on children. They're different than adults. They're much better antennas. Well, why is that? Because they are a different height, which will attract these frequencies, and it's called resonance. And when you get close to one or a multiple of two of a frequency, you will take on exponentially more radiation. So they're shorter, they have higher water content, they're better receiving antennas, they have thinner skulls, meaning the radiation will get through their brain more easily. That's again why you want distance from all these devices. Let me tell you how I manage my phone. Okay. My cell phone is on less than 2 minutes a day. My antennas are powered off nearly all the time. I don't give anyone my cell phone number. I have a landline, which is really a voice over IP number over the internet for people to contact me. And I do all of my business out of my home office. And you leave a voicemail message there, and it's my responsibility to pick that up, and I will do so. But I don't allow people to text me and call me when I'm on the road. That is not a reliable way to get to me. And so I actually manage everybody through my business line at my home office. That's all you need to do. You don't need to be 100% available to everyone at all times. That's just something that they get you on the treadmill to try to decide that, oh, that's the way it'll be from now on. Well, no, I don't like that much tracking. And so my cell phone goes on only when I'm out and about and I need to text someone quickly. I almost never call someone because, again, I'm asking too much power, too much radiation to come right next to me. That's not a good idea. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to have your cell phone on while you're driving in a car. That's a really bad idea. You want to have your antennas off and your cell phone not receiving signals the whole time you're driving. And then when you get to your destination, you can turn your antennas on, but only leave it on for as long as you need them and turn them off as soon as you're done. Now you've managed the power of your phone to the point of getting some utility out of it when you need it, but you're not getting poisoned by it 24/7. What you don't want to do is take a phone that's on, talking to the tower, and then stick it in your pocket, stick it in your bra, put it next to your skin. That's the disaster. That's the closest distance you can. In vertical horizontal power, your vertical is 0, your horizontal is 0, and it's right next to you. You don't want this. This is biologically disastrous. So you just think of it as a burning pack of cigarettes. What do you want to do to manage that? Do you just want to have that in your pocket at all times? Well, no, you don't. So if you have to have the phone on waiting for a call, put it on a shelf. Get some distance from you and that phone. You can still hear it when it's 3 to 5, 10 feet away. You'll come over and get that call if it's important. All right. But you got to unhook from actually this tether of a phone, because it's just a major source of tracking. It's a major source of control over you. And so try to break yourself from this whole thing. And so you do all of your internet through wire and not by wireless, and all kinds of good benefits happen. Number one, your memory gets better. Number two, you think clearer. All right. This thing gets right in the middle of your ability to think. And so that's an important skill that's going south. Like right now, our IQs are going down by generation in the United States for a number of reasons. We're really polluting our environments, and we're just putting wireless everywhere on top of young kids who can't withstand it. It's also a way to make everyone sterile. It'll wipe out the ability to have children. So wireless is got biological effects. That has been proven in court right here with decades of great research being done and accepted by the courts. I would make sure that everyone that you talk to try to get something done understands this evidence. And you put it on them and you say the whole wireless guideline by ICNIRP and everybody else is a scam. And I know it's a scam. And I can tell you
It was
exactly
done by
why. People in the United States, and ICNIRP just picked up on it after we did it. Okay, that whole committee was just a series of people, and they went to scientists first, and they wrote a big old paper, and it's a good paper. It's about 450 pages. I read it. It's about 16 chapters, and they did a good job of figuring out. This was in 1996 was the analysis of a paper that was written in 1986, looking at research through 1982. So all the way through 1982, we understood very well that there was biological effects of microwave radiation, well documented in this paper. And they go through the whole thing and they try to figure out ways that they can somehow talk about what would be a radiation limit. And they came up with two things: specific absorption and specific absorption rate. Those are two very different things. Let's talk about that. Specific absorption is the total amount of radiation that actually you absorb from whatever the source is. Well, that means you have to look at how long you're standing there. How much are you getting it over time? That's the important part. Specific absorption rate is just the rate at which we deliver the poison. Well, that was an open question. Which one should they choose? The scientists built a case for either. And the guy that came in, all the scientists were dismissed. Thank you very much. And then our US government picked a guy from the CIA to come in and just write Chapter 17 to do the scam. And the scam was to pick a specific absorption rate. So it's as simple as this. Hi, James, tell me, how far did you drive yesterday? And James turns around and says, well, I drove 30 miles per hour. And I go, what? I didn't ask you that. I asked how far you drove. Uh-oh. I drove 30 miles an hour for half an hour, so I drove 15 miles. Well, the same thing happens for microwave radiation. When the whole guideline is set up in a rate, and then they don't talk about time of exposure at all in the guideline. And that's just nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. And there's videos that I've put up to try to explain this, but essentially it's like, beakers of poison that are getting filled. And so either you say, well, what do you want to do? How much poison do you want to drink? It matters the amount of poison. And that matters with your time of exposure. And that's the difference between a cell phone and a cell phone tower or wireless telecommunications facility. Your cell phone can be managed by you. You can turn it on and off as needed. The cell phone tower or the wireless telecommunications facility is on 24/7. You don't have the ability to turn it off. So you're just getting a load of poison all day, all night, forever. And that's a lot of poison. And you have to understand that that's cumulative and that's effective. That's why you really want to minimize it as much as possible. Okay, So those are some of the things that I've learned through just hard research. I get the third level tech support of all the people, all the companies. I've had top engineers say, I won't give you my name, but I'll tell you all the truth from antenna companies. I basically lobby at the federal, state, and local levels in the United States, and I'm happy to share this internationally, but I can't tell you I understand your laws other than ICNIRP is just a total scam. Just a bunch of private people invited to a club. They should have no authority over you whatsoever. But this is all done through the United Nations and the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, and they just shove it down your throats. So you want to sit down and figure out how you can get local standards that are not tied to these global standards. That's the important part. All right, so I think I've rambled on a bit just to introduce you to a few websites. There are a few more. This is the national website. Wire California is the California-based website. We've been successful at fighting back legislation that was friendly to the telecom industry. And Unsafe at NEG, which is a takeoff on a book written in the United States, Unsafe at Any Speed, which was written in the 1960s, is a way for us to talk about this locally and do things better for local ordinances. This is inside the woman's apartment that I showed you earlier. This is in her bedroom looking out at the antenna. I measured it. I took a picture of it. It's a disaster. And what you want to do is you want to figure out a way to get out of the box of this disaster. All right. So I hope that gives you some background information. And these are websites you can go to. Each of them have the ability to search. You just come over here, search in the type of what you want to learn with. A really good guy who knows things in America is called Kushnick. And so there you go. You get all kinds of places where Kushnick is mentioned, and you can go into different articles. I put new information on this every day. A lot of it can be helpful to you. And so it's all free. It's not behind a paywall. It is a copyright at the bottom. I don't enforce copyright. Steal anything you want off of this. I'm just trying to give everybody access to good information so they can make progress. And so I think I will rest, James. And
here's a key fact that you can share with anyone you want. I think we all understand Marie Curie from Paris was the one that did all the lab work in nuclear isotopes. And they have preserved her lab at a museum in Paris. But when you go, you have to wear these special radiation suits and take a Geiger counter in and make sure you don't stay there too long. And you can see it, but it goes everywhere. It goes into all the doorknobs and everything else. Well, what was the effect on her? She studied for roughly 30 years, and she died a little bit early, and her daughter died a little bit early from cancer. They died in their 60s, both of them. But the guy who did the initial seminal work in microwave radiation is Heinrich Hertz. And he worked alone in his lab, just putting electrical power through metal sheets and bouncing it around. He killed himself from his work as well. How many years did it take him to kill himself? 8 years. Just 8 years. He died in his 30s. This is very toxic stuff. You do not want to have a whole big load of radiation if you can avoid it. So the key thing is, are there inexpensive devices that you can buy in order to get some idea of what is around you so you can decide, how do I manage it and how do I shield it? Well, yes, of course there are. And in fact, I have. If I share my screen again, I could show you what the RF meter section is all about. But, you know, the issue is you have to understand that there's multiple ways to think and talk about what essentially is electrical power through the air. That's really all that's going on. And so you can actually sit down and go, oh, okay, we're just trying to take electricity, which we know travels through wires, and we're trying to spray it through the air. That's all. And so this electrical power, there's two parts to this tango. All right. Your goal is to make a cell phone call. All right. It takes a certain amount of power to do it. Part of that power is contributed by the cell phone tower. Part of that power is contributed by your phone. In the example you gave, your phone was providing a ton of power to make up for the lack of power from the cell phone tower, meaning your phone was much, much more dangerous to you at that time. And so the point is, if you're in an area with decent service, meaning enough dBm, your phone doesn't have to power up as much, and your phone isn't such a problem for you. If you are very far from a tower, your phone is a much bigger problem for you. And you shouldn't be operating a phone when there's only a few bars on your phone. All right. You should just say, I'm going to wait till I get to an area of better service. Or do what I do. Every iPhone and every iPad can be connected to the internet by wire. And you can turn all your antennas off and you can use it like a wonderful computer. And you can make phone calls via Skype that way. And there are ways that you can turn your device into a very safe wired device. You don't have to make your calls on these towers. You can figure out a way to make it by wire. The whole point is you want to have the least amount of wires possible in your life, and you will extend your life, and you will think better, and you will be better off all the way around.
I think that's why your website is called Wire America, not Wireless America.
Or wired, right? The answer is it is a call to action. The way to fix the problem is to wire your connection to the internet. That's what you want. And you want as little wireless as possible. And so, look, a lot of people choose to have a wireless access point in their homes. It's very convenient. Okay. I choose the other way. Why? Because I had heart palpitations. It was sending me to the hospital. I couldn't tolerate it. I had already been injured by wireless by some other source over the years. And so I figured out a way to lower the amount of radiation that's in my home. And then I figured out ways to ensure that towers are further away from me personally. Okay. We passed a local law that does not allow cell phone towers in the public rights of way in neighborhoods. It's not allowed. That's cool. We don't need them. And so that's a good way to protect yourself. Okay. And that's a systemic way to do it. But the whole point here, a lot of these questions are just about, oh, what are the bad frequencies? And, oh, how do I know the power? And what's safe? What's not safe? Hey, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. There is no safe. Okay. There's just compliance. Oh, we're compliant with XYZ standard. Does that mean it's safe? Nope. Never did. Never can. There is no real safe level, folks. Is there a safe level for smoking cigarettes? Well, no. Do people do it? Yes. All right. Well, what do you know about smoking cigarettes? If you're an everyday smoker and you smoke it all the time, you're going to end up having more problems than the person that might have a cigarette or two on the weekends. Well, that makes sense. Well, wireless is the same way. Okay. So if you have it all the time, essentially when I addressed the issue and I had a professional come out and measure my home and show me all the sources of several things, it's not just radio frequency microwave radiation. There's also things going on near electrical lines. There's magnetic fields and what they call conducted emissions, which is a way for electrical waste to re-radiate out of your electrical wires. All of that can send a signal through your house. And if you don't know about it or measure it or try to manage it, then it can affect you. So I took all of the person's advice. I paid, roughly $800 for the report and spent less than $200 in my home. And I just removed all the sources of conducted emissions and removed all the sources of wireless. And I can't tell you what a difference it was in my life over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. Whereas I had difficulty sleeping and I had difficulty thinking and all the rest of my memory was going south. I was in my early 50s. I'd been to the hospital thinking I'd had a heart attack, right? All that stuff was happening to me. That all cleared up, man. I got to tell you, my memory got much better. All of my, the way I used to think back in my 20s and 30s came right on back. All right. And so I have a good memory today. I'm in my 60s now and I do a lot, and I do it by making sure I don't envelop my whole home with wireless. And I make sure that my daughter doesn't have a SIM in her cell phone, and she does all of her phoning and connecting with people by wire at my house. And this is an easier way to handle this. All right. And so I do it by getting meters. Meters range in price and capability, but there's 2 main types of meters. And if I go ahead and go back to sharing my screen, I'll just show you that page. And so, there's links and ways that you can figure it out. But, that's the whole point is you go to a particular website and you go, oh, well, what would I like to learn? I'd like to learn something about meters. All right, well, great. Do you have anything about meters on your website? Well, in fact, I do. It's in a menu, but oh, look, RF microwave radiation meters. I found it through searching. All right, great. Let's learn about that. Okay. And you'll see there's 2 types of meters. There's a broadband meter and a spectrum analyzer. And I give you links to some good ones. All right. And these are in the $400 range. All right. And if you buy one of each of these things, well, now you're going to get close to understanding what's going on, because you got to know how much in total from all sources is coming at you. That'll give you a number. And then you want to actually break it down and figure out who's contributing what. And then you need this to figure that out. All right. And so, this is the total amount of radiation. And the problem is that you have this FCC maximum thing. Okay. That's what's allowed by government. And this is what gives you 5 bars on a cell phone. Well, how much more is this than that? Let's see, that would be 5 billion times more. So you need very little power to get 5 bars on a cell phone. And then when you're 15,000 more, you have sleep disorders. When you're 600,000 more, you get childhood leukemia. What's allowed by the government? 5 billion times more. So you can understand the scale's way off. And this is trying to show you, this is all from scientific information. That's all developed in that set of information I showed you on the front page of my website. Okay. So this is going to RF Explorer. It's just one of the spectrum analyzers out there, but it's not necessarily the most professional one, but it's probably better than most of the other ones out there. And it gives you a little reading and it explains how the whole thing works. And it really depends on the quality of the antenna that you put on it. But there's ways for you to understand what it is that's around you. All right. And so you just go ahead and figure out where are the sources and how do I reduce them? This would be a professional meter. This is an SRM 5000. It's just, bigger and more expensive, and it's got the same kind of little chart on it as this other less expensive one. But you'll learn enough with this one. And this one will set you back $400, and this one will cost you $25,000. Okay.
And
So,
you said
that,
you said you hired someone who
I
was
did.
professional who did this for you. We've got a question from Sam, and so Sam, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, look, electromagnetic frequency pollution is ubiquitous and it's everywhere, right? I mean, it's kind of like, how do we avoid it without? I mean, some people obviously are a lot more sensitive electromagnetic to EMFs than others. But in our daily lives, we're exposed to so many environmental toxins, whether they be pollutants in our water, in our air, et cetera, et cetera. And now we've got electromagnetic pollution as well. So, apart from the preventive measures that we can take in terms of minimizing the load of frequencies, is there anything else we can do that could actually shield us from it? I know some people use aluminum foil to line their houses and stuff like that. I'm not sure if there are any solutions that you're aware of that we could implement.
Yeah, plenty of them. And that's what building biologists are all about. And that's who I hired to actually assess my home. And then I figured out what could I do at reasonable prices to kind of get to where I needed to go. All right. So shielding is effective if done properly and done by people who know what they're doing. The biggest problem you have in shielding is that you're not in control of the sources of radiation out there, meaning that I got a cell phone tower south of me, so I'm going to do a bunch of shielding on the wall between that tower and myself. All right, so I put some metal up or do whatever I had to do to kind of make sure it didn't keep putting a big load into my house. Well, next week, they put a cell phone tower north of me, and now that is coming into my house, bouncing off my shielding, coming right back at me. So listen, in order to have a really good shield, you need a really good seal everywhere. And the fact that James has a wire mesh and a stucco, that's pretty good, but the heck is it's coming right through the windows no matter what. And so you're not really protected at all if you don't address your windows. And hey, you could address your windows and not address your vinyl window frames. Look up, check that out. It'll come right through the vinyl window frames, right? This is a home invasion, all right? And if you want to be, the least expensive way and the most effective way to lower your load is to get these canopies with the shielding fabric. They are effective. And you put them around your bed and you sleep. It's not like a mosquito net, all right? And you basically sleep within that. And you make sure you cover all sides, which means you have to deal with the floor as well, unless you're on the ground. Right? But a lot of people are on second floor, third floor, and you got to take care of the floor in addition. But you also have to make sure you ground that device. All right. Because anytime you have something that's metal, which is inside this fabric, it will take on the electric and magnetic fields, or the electric fields that come out of your wires, right? Every country has own wiring standards. If everybody enforced commercial wiring standards everywhere, meaning you put electrical wires in metal pipe, well, then you wouldn't have as many problems. But what we have is we put electricity in homes through plastic wire. And that means that it can escape plastic wire. And that's how it gets out into your environment. That's what the electric fields are. So you have to be aware of what all the fields are. And there are meters and there are people that know about it. And they are building biologists. And there are ways they go for some training. I've been through some of the training myself. And so, you can figure it out. All right. So the whole point is that you can take the attitude, kind of like you said earlier, oh, everything's getting poisoned, it's everywhere, throw your hands up. Well, okay. Or you sit down and understand what are the sources and what's reasonable to do to lower my load. And so all I did was took a look at all the possibilities and used what I could. So if as long as it's not expensive and doesn't whack out your life, why not? Why not do it? Right. That's the way I look at it. And look, it's a little less convenient. I get it. Am I willing to trade off some convenience for better health, no dementia later on, all the things that you kind of want in life? Yeah, sure.
Phrase
Why not?
or the terminology 3G, 4G, 5G. Okay. I think add to the confusion because they don't mean what people think they mean. Can you talk on how that is actually a source of confusion as well?
Sure. I mean, the way that they control populations around the world is they essentially say, oh, we'll talk about this thing, we'll give it a label. And then behind the scenes, they keep changing the definition of the thing behind the label. And so some people learned what 5G meant from 2 years ago, and they think that's it. Well, no, 5G has been redefined 3 or 4 or 5 times. It's just their way for them to play their shell game. So my point to you is, it doesn't matter what they label it as. What really matters is what are the frequencies and what is the power level? Talk about that. All right. That's going to not worry about the label, because the problem is everyone thinks, a lot of people think, oh, a 5G is special and it's worse. And in this other, it's not, it's all the same stuff. Okay. And your frequencies go up and down, and higher frequencies do behave a little differently than lower frequencies. And that's the other words that are terrible to use, higher and lower. What's higher mean to you? What's lower mean to you? Oh my God, it's meaningless. What you want to say is specifically, yes, I have frequencies 600 megahertz to 3000 megahertz at my home. And the majority of it is 600 megahertz. See this on the little spectrum map? Yeah, the bigger stuff is here versus there. This stuff is minus 40 dBm. That's my problem. This other stuff over here is minus 90 dBm. I'm not getting much out of that. So it's really the 600 megahertz I have to address here. Okay. But I mean, to talk about this as the big boogeyman monster of, oh, the 5G is going to come to kill me. Well, no, mostly it's the 4G that's already killing you. Right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, don't worry about the G's. The G's
What
are just
can we
confusing.
do to reduce the issue of 5G? I mean, I'm sorry, well, we don't currently have 5G to that degree. Apparently, there are some phones. Most of us still run 4G on our systems, on our mobiles.
Paul, may I add to that question as well? Pagers are a different beast. Most people put it on their hip. Is there a difference in safety level between having a phone in your pocket and a pager on your hip?
Okay, well, it's all, again, what's about power levels, and power levels essentially think about the data that's being sent back and forth. The higher the amount of data, the more radiation that is occurring close to you on your phone. The lower amount of data, not much of a problem. So 2 things: you want distance as your friend and lower amounts of data being requested back and forth. So you have a choice. You have a choice to say, I'm going to do a video call with someone. That's one load of data. That's a lot of it. I'm going to have an audio call. Well, that's cuts out all that video. So that saves you some power right there. Or I'm going to have a text. Okay. A text is like a little fruit fly. There ain't much going on there. All right. So the idea is, if you can text more often at a distance from your hip or your brain or something else, that is the safest way to use your phone. Right. You want to hold it out away from your torso and go ahead and text away. And frankly, if you did that, your phone would never be a disaster for you. Okay. The problem is people sometimes pick up that phone and use it like a landline phone and put it next to their head. That is a disaster for you. You never, ever, ever want to do that. So what you want to do if you have to have a conversation is you either put it on speakerphone and hold it some distance, or you get a earbud set and you put that into your phone and talk at a distance. But you don't want the device next to your head, in your pocket, next to you, on your hip as you're moving around. You don't want that. And so you want some distance. That's important. Okay. Now, this whole thing of I have to be available, in real time for emergency calls, I get it. It's a big problem in your life. And I understand it might be a requirement of your job. And so I'm not saying you have to push it away and never, ever use it. I am saying, do I have to have it when I drive in the car? Really? Or could I get that message once I arrive at my place? While I'm driving in the car, can I really do anything about anything anyway, other than drive? No, not really. Is it, what if I turn it on once I get there? Will I still get the message? Will I still respond in time? I guess a lot of that depends on how long your trip is. Okay. So the whole issue is you have to make this decision about, how available do I want to be and in what environments I want to place myself in. Let me tell you what happens when you drive in a car. Okay. If you were on the side of the road and you stood outside and you made your call, you have a certain amount of radiation. Okay, got it. Now I'm in a car. What's going on? Well, you think nothing's going on because I'm not making a call, but that's not true. Your phone is looking for a tower every step of the way, and it's getting all worried and it's getting all powered up because it's, oh my God, I lost my tower. Where's the tower? Where's the tower? Oh, there's one. Okay, got it. You're just going down on the road. You don't think about it. Okay. But then as it gets further from the tower, oh my God, where's another tower? Oh, there's one. Okay, I got it. And the whole time it does it, it invites radiation into a metal box. Oh, what's going on? Once it's in your car, it bounces off the floor, the door, the roof, all around you. You're getting 10 or 20 times more radiation in your car than you would be if you were standing outside. This is the problem. Metal boxes multiply. Wi-Fi on planes are a freaking disaster. I can't imagine anybody watching a wireless video on a plane, but you are just inundating yourself with radiation that you will not be escaping. It is happening and bouncing and happening to you the entire time. If I see somebody trying to watch a video on my plane, I put my little button on, I get moved. I don't put up with that. I don't sit next to that. It's going to make these shields and these other things that you buy to somehow harmonize your environment and all the rest. There's theories about how they can work. I'm not saying they don't necessarily work or otherwise. I'm just saying it's difficult to stay on top of the ones because generally what happens is someone says, I feel better after using it. Well, there could be many reasons why you feel better. And it could be placebo, nocebo, who knows what's going on. What I will say is this, that you have control over shielding your environment, which is easier to do than shielding yourself. Shielding yourself and thinking, because the problem is you have this false sense of confidence when you try to shield your phone or yourself, okay? Because you're not getting it all. You're not, and you think that you're doing something when in reality, oh, so I can use my phone more now. The answer is you really want to minimize it as much as possible. You want to minimize the sources. That is your best strategy for getting it done. It's okay to try any of these other things that are possible. There's a guy, Martin Blank is a scientist who wrote a really good book called Overpowered. He has since passed away, but his son, R. Blank, has a company called Shield Your Body. And he at least tests these things before he sells them. And so he's actually pretty good at selling the stuff. A lot of people just want to make money. So they will go ahead and hawk a thing and get you to buy it and say, oh, it's the one that's going to fix you. And it could be a waste of money. I'm not an expert on all the little products and all the little things you can do. I am an expert in understanding what the environment is and what you can do to try to fix your environment. And the good news is there's a whole program for building biology that's worldwide. And so if you find these kinds of people, they're already somewhat trained to kind of get you going in the right direction. I hired one for my own home. I was so interested.
But definitely texting, it just holding the phone weakens a person's energy field, just to share that.
No worries. Well, let me tell you how I really text when I'm at home. My cell phone's not on. I actually send it through a service that sends it to my computer or my iPad, which are both wired. So I do
Yes,
texting
that-
through an external keyboard without any wireless around me all the time. The only time I might use my phone for a text is when I'm out and about and I have to check in with a wife, because a happy wife is a happy life and she forces me to have a phone. And so I just text her and say, I'm out. Do you need some milk? And she says, yes, thank you. And then I pick up the milk. And so then I get to live with her another week. At the end of the day, I lost my phone for 3 months and I was happy as a clam and I didn't want another one. And, social pressure said, well, you should order a phone. So I did. And the very next hour, she found my phone in the garage. I think subconsciously I left it out there because I didn't like
Between
it.
the example, if you have Wi-Fi sitting in your house and switching back to broadband, I assume broadband running at different levels depending on how strong the signal is. A Wi-Fi in the house might be better, but what you're saying is 5G Wi-Fi is just as bad as any 5G.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is essentially just as bad as a cell phone tower. It doesn't matter if it's 5G Wi-Fi or any other kind of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is just a bad deal. And it's a bad deal from your router and it's a bad deal from your device. Again, it takes two to tango. So the point is, oh, my router's upstairs away from me. I'm safe. Well, no, you're looking at a wireless device right in front of you.
Right.
So
No,
the whole time you're operating it, it actually is poisoning you. Hey, you know what you could do? You could just go ahead and put an Ethernet wire into that device and then not worry about this anymore.
But you can't on a phone, though. You can't do that.
Well, no, on a phone you can do that. In fact, I do it with my Wi-Fi, with my iPhone and my iPad both. We use our iPhone and iPad fully wired, and there's no wireless in my house. I have to tell you what I've been able to achieve. I have no wireless in my house whatsoever. We never turn anything wireless on. I'm up and over a hill. I have less than 0.1 microwatt per square meter. Generally, people are happy if they have 10. I'm 0.1. I have achieved nirvana. I just out of happenstance, because I'm up and over a couple of hills and I kept these towers away from my house. So I'm in a nice little safe place and I intend to keep it that way. All right. But I choose not to pollute my own environment by putting Ethernet wires everywhere and adapters. And that's how I use my phone. All right. I actually call James on my iPad every day whenever we talk. It's through my iPad. Okay. But it's not wireless. All right. When he texts me, it shows up on my iPad. That's great. Not wireless. All right. So I'm doing everything wired using the technology. And I'm a really high tech guy. I'm not sitting there going, oh, I can't use it. Heck, I use it all. I just don't do it wirelessly because I don't have to.
So what that means is there's some kind of a port that can actually switch your phone into that has Ethernet ability.
Correct. It's essentially a USB 3 camera adapter for your iPhone.
USB
3 camera adapter, right? And let me tell you how that happened. Okay, 2013. Tim Cook has taken over Apple. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, and we're about to buy $5 million worth of iPads for our school. And I look at it and I got, there's no way to put wires on an iPad at that time. So I basically got straight to tech support, 4th level, and then I went directly to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. And I said, look, I'm gonna have to advise my school to cancel your $5 million order of iPads because you haven't figured out a way to write a driver for allowing people to do wired networking. And so I suggest you put an engineer on it. 6 months later, we could wire the iPad. So, you got to push some people at the top, but we got a solution 6 months after that. Not all services will work this way. So you jump services and you get one that does work that way. For example, Skype works perfectly fine via wire. All right. So if you get a Skype number and call everybody through that, you're all set. You don't have to. And this is why I never give out my damn cell phone number to anyone. I want the freedom to move services around to fit my life. And so, you don't get to text me on my cell phone number. You get to text me on my text number, which is one that I can use by wire anywhere I am, on any computer, on any iPad, on any iPhone. And I don't have to be tethered to the wireless. If you go and give out your phone number, well, now you're in a box. Now certain services only work when you touch the tower. So don't create that box. I appreciate James Roguski. He very much connects with people all over the world. He's a very smart and an effective advocate for getting good stuff done. So anytime he recommends I go do something, I'm going to do it. Good luck to everybody. Stay free and stay effective out there and keep your stuff as safe as possible. Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.